Good evening to all and welcome. My name is Maria Elise Divane and I serve as the Executive Director of Educators for Excellence New York. Our mission at E4E is to ensure educators have a leading voice in the policies that impact students and the profession. And NYC Reads is a key example of our organization living its mission. Our educators in New York fought hard and demanded this change, and the city leadership listened. And here we have New York City Reads, which places literacy as job number one in our public schools. So, what is NYC Reads? All elementary schools will use an approved ELA curriculum rooted in the science of reading, phased in over 2 years. This initiative aims to improve literacy education in NYC public schools using research-based curricula and intensive, cohesive, professional development for educators. Tonight, our focus is on literacy, but I do not want to miss this opportunity to point to the recently released PISA scores, which showed an unprecedented decline in math achievement across the country, and to state our firm belief that we should be having a very similar effort and conversation about math. Now, about this evening. While NYC Reads offers a promising solution to the literacy challenges in New York City, Educators for Excellence New York has called for ongoing professional learning and active educator involvement to ensure the effectiveness of this transformative initiative. And for
The most
tonight,
exciting
with the Knowledge Matters campaign to bring you the following 90 minutes in order to help educators understand the new curriculum options in New York City schools. We are grateful to Barbara Davidson and Karen Bates at KMC, and we feel very proud of bringing this opportunity to the field and look forward to your questions and your comments throughout this evening. Now let's get into our agenda. I'll see you at the end of our session. And now I leave you with Lasana Tunica L, which is E4E New York Senior Deputy Director of Campaigns. Lasana.
Thank you, Maria Elise. As said, I am Lasana Tunica L, Senior Deputy Director of Campaigns at E4E New York. So we're here to engage in a grounded conversation about New York City's new ELA curricula options. Phase 1 of the rollout of NYC Reads is well underway, and Phase 2 superintendents have most recently made their choices of the curricula. We will hear classroom insights and practical advice from expert educators using Into Reading, Wit and Wisdom, and EL Education. Then we'll follow with a chat with senior managers at TNTP. TNTP, for those who may not know, the New Teachers Project is a national nonprofit that has managed and supported large-scale implementations of high-quality instructional materials around the country, including implementations of the aforementioned Into Reading, EL Education, and Wit and Wisdom, the 3 curriculum solutions that are part of NYC Reads. They are based here in New York City and have partnered with New York City Public Schools on a wide variety of the district's programs and initiatives since they were founded by teachers over 25 years ago. So first, we'll hear from one of the consulting partners at TNTP, Dr. Jetta Donovan, to give voice to this idea of the science of reading. Dr. Jetta.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. For many of you, I know it's coming on the heels of a long day of teaching and supporting New York City students. I myself was a teacher in New York City public schools and a reading specialist and a coach. And at TNTP now, I do work across the country supporting the science of reading. And I will say that the moment that we are in feels, in my experience, like a once in a generation opportunity to shift the student experience in New York City schools. And for those of you who are classroom teachers, you are at the front lines of that generational opportunity. We are certainly in a national moment around science of reading. And, many of the ideas around science of reading have absolutely been in the field of cognitive science for many decades and in pockets in the education field. But there is something very unique about this particular moment. I would say, firstly, there's a real coalescing around evidence-based practices for literacy instruction, really naming what practices are effective and backed in research around reading acquisition for students. Two, there is a recognition of the role of curriculum and strong curriculum in shifting practice in classrooms. We cannot expect teachers with the finite amount of time that they have in the day to also design a research-backed literacy curriculum that includes, a scope for systematic phonics and a scope for knowledge building, rich knowledge building opportunities for students. And so there's a real recognition that curriculum is the foundation for this change. And I would say the third thing is that there is an appreciation for the importance of investing in our teachers, knowledge, in their professional learning to help lead this change in their classrooms. And one of the reasons I think that we're at this, we are coalescing around these particular key ideas is because we're starting to see some real proof points in large districts and states around the efficacy of some of this approach. We see it in Mississippi, in Louisiana, in Tennessee. There's some exciting data coming out of California. These are places that have paired a strategy, a vision for evidence-based literacy with an adoption of strong materials and a deep support of educator training and professional learning. And I think the exciting thing that we're seeing is that New York City is really taking this roadmap for success and thinking about how to apply it in the complicated, busy context of New York City schools. One key message that I continue to try and tell everyone I talk to, but especially the classroom teachers, for those of you who are on the call tonight, is that you are at the very beginning of this journey. We are just a few months into this initiative in New York City. The states and large districts that I have worked with that have made this change, it has taken several years to really make sustainable change and start to see the types of gains in student outcomes that we want to see. And as we think about the ramp up that's going to happen in New York City schools next year, both in expanding to all elementary schools in the city, but also increasing the reach around math curriculum implementation, there's much more to do. And I've worked, and my colleagues who you're going to hear from later have worked with district teams and teacher teams and leader teams over multiple years to deeply learn their materials, to figure out the professional learning structures that work to help them effectively implement those things, to find the right alignment of systems and structures to support implementation. And that takes time, and that takes trying things out and learning from them. And so I just encourage everyone who's engaged in this RIM initiative, from whatever position you sit in the system, to just lean into that learning orientation, to strive for continuous improvement, and to learn along the way and from each other. And I think opportunities like tonight are an opportunity for us to engage in that collaborative learning across the city. So appreciate E4E for giving us that opportunity to do it.
Will take time. This is a multi-year effort so that we can establish a firm infrastructure with our ELA learning so that we can improve the outcomes, literacy outcomes in New York City. So now we'll shift to our expert teacher panels. And the ask is that each of our panelists would share their experiences with a particular curriculum, what's powerful, what's challenges, as well as citing some glows and grows, and then finally some tips for success. And we know that some of you may be tuning in to hear about one of the particular curriculums. So we'll have the opportunity to share your feedback after each panelist in real time. We are offering some gift cards as a raffle so that you can build your science of reading library. And we'll be selecting 3 people who complete the survey. So we'll now, first one up is Erica Boyce out of Queens, New York City. Erica, if you will, share your experiences with the curriculum into reading.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Erica Boyce. I am a 5th grade special ed teacher at PS 132, the Ralph Bunche School where dreams come true.
That's right.
So, with an overview, as a new addition to my school community, I will be going into my second year teaching the Into Reading curriculum. However, my school has implemented this curriculum during the hybrid years due to our COVID loss. My principal, Mr. Baptiste, believes in small group instruction and that grouping should be data driven, flexible, and based on the needs of our students. In order to build teacher capacity to develop authentic tasks that are accessible to all students, my principal ensured that his teachers developed and implemented the Know It and Show It plan into the curriculum, planning and worked closely with the instructional planning team where the notices was that our children needed more access to content rich materials and phonemic awareness. He showed us ways in providing explicit instruction while promoting clear and direct teaching methods, leaving no room for ambiguity or confusion, supporting us with ways on how to implement this curriculum, allowing students to actively engage in critical thinking, writing, and academic discourse. So now when it comes to my experience, what has been powerful with the Into Reading curriculum, it incorporates the 5 pillars of reading instruction in its curriculum, helping students to build their fluency, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, and comprehension with the tools like Amera and the Rigby level text. It gives teachers like myself opportunities to create fun activities via Padlet, for example, where students answer discussion questions about the vocabulary learned. I like how the texts are culturally responsive, reflecting the diverse backgrounds and experiences, and identifies with our students. It also promotes critical thinking and allow educators to provide additional support and tailor their instruction to meet student needs with the tabletop resource. The Interreading curriculum aligns with state standards and provides ongoing assessment tools to track student progress and inform instruction. This has also supported me in cross-curricular alignment while using data from different curricular supports and capitalizing on the strengths in order to provide a well-rounded education for my scholars. What has been hard for me, and also with some of my colleagues, when it comes to time constraints, there's often limited time to cover all the materials included in the curriculum. This is a challenge as educators like myself feel rushed. Initially, in the beginning, the multiple components to address in the lesson has been a challenge. When it comes to the know it, show it, even though we don't want to teach to the test, it has been expressed that the wording of the questions on the assessments are different to the questions asked in the lessons. During our collaborative discussion, students expressed that the text boxes are too small to write in, and every student is expected and required to give a written response and elaboration of their thinking. Now, some glows. Under the supervision of my principal, my school understands the importance of high quality instruction in achieving student success, ensuring that instruction is explicit, systematic, differentiated, and data driven. This curriculum allows for more detailed monitoring of student progress and individualized feedback. Lessons are aligned to the standards with plans to close the achievement gap using data. It allows me to attend and provide explicit instruction in foundational reading skills. The tabletop resource creates room for small group and continued explicit instruction that is direct and deliberate teaching of each skill and strategy. Interreading includes a volume and range of complex, cultural, relevant texts, like I mentioned before, and this goes back to the child as a whole. And I have noticed how my students really enjoy the stories. Along with the online testing provides an option to read to students. Now, when it comes to the grows, our little babies in the kindergarten grade are not provided with texts of readings during read alouds and would benefit from them when it comes to their visual literacy and learn to gather information from both the text and images. This allows for and fosters a love for reading. Secondly, there are too many moving parts when you are constrained by period blocks, as I mentioned before. And students and teachers often complain that the passages need to be shorter, and teachers have to implement the audio in order to keep up with the pacing. So, to further illustrate my point, here's a video from 2 of my scholars. A glow for our collaborative discussion is that since we're practicing RAD for our written responses, I have to transfer it to my notebook so I could finish writing.
A growth for the HMH book is that sometimes some stories are extremely long and I lose focus and my teacher has to refocus me.
They just made me smile. Okay, so tips for success for new teachers. Weekly planners help educators stay organized and with time management to map out each day's lesson to see how each lesson aligns with the larger curriculum framework. It incorporate the backwards design for planning, looking at the assessment and quizzes, exposing them to the types of questions they will encounter in the assessments. It prepares them effectively, and it also builds their confidence in performing their best and also connects to their social and emotional. Utilizing the resources such as the grammar book, the journal prompt books for struggling learners, and the Amera. My kids love Amera. And never be afraid to collaborate and meet with your peers, to plan together, to break down what your scholars should know and show as a result of the skills and standards taught. Just build a community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica. That was great to see the kids engaged. So again, there's the QR code. You can give your feedback in real time as we shift over to our next expert educator is Kyair Butts. And Kyair is out of Baltimore City, and he will be sharing his experience around wit and wisdom. Hello, Kyair.
Hey, good evening. Super excited to be here. Hopefully, I'm not thrown out of the party since I'm from Baltimore, but I am very excited to be here. So, thanks, everyone. Just a little bit about me. I do work in Baltimore City. I'm originally from Iowa. I'm going on year 11, although it also could be 8, 9, or 10. You're sort of at that point where you're unsure what the exact number is, but you know that it's been long and long enough. But I still find a lot of joy and get a lot of joy out of being a classroom teacher. I currently teach 7th grade. This is my second year teaching 7th grade and previously taught 6th grade. And we also used Wit and Wisdom when I first started teaching 6th grade. I've also been a 4th and 5th grade teacher, so I'm hoping that 7th grade is where it stops as far as going up and up. In 2019, I won Teacher of the Year for Baltimore City Public Schools, which is a really big deal because I was the first Black man to win the award, but also it just represented all of the families and students that I've had the pleasure of working with. So I'm excited to be with you all tonight and share a little bit about myself, my educational journey, and how Wit and Wisdom has impacted my kids and me. So one of the stories that I want to very quickly tell, it's an anecdote about a 6th grader, and her name is McKinley. McKinley had an IEP when I taught her. She had a mild case of cerebral palsy. Her mom in 5th grade was writing assignments for her because McKinley was having trouble doing that. McKinley got pulled out. She got pull-out services. She got push-in services. She was reading well below grade level. Now, as the year went on, McKinley started to gain more and more confidence. And I attribute that in part to Wit and Wisdom, and we'll get into why. But the impact here, even as we look at the student work and you hear this anecdote about this student McKinley, because all of you have a McKinley student, someone who's below grade level, maybe they have an IEP of 504, some sort of learning impairment. McKinley struggled sometimes with wanting to participate in class and get that invitation to participate in like the knowledge party because she didn't always feel confident. Well, we get to our first assessment, and in Wit and Wisdom, this first assessment is called a focusing question task. It was in 6th grade, and it's the first one. Students were asked to write just one paragraph about what makes Bud a survivor. Bud from the book Bud Not Buddy. McKinley was able to write 3 papers, folks. College ruled, and I need to note that because that's a lot of extra writing. She wrote 3 pages about what makes Bud a survivor. It wasn't rambling, it wasn't off topic. She knew so much about the character of Bud that McKinley outwrote some students in my honors class. And that's really impressive. I share that anecdote with you because we want to make sure that every child is capable of greatness. And that really is the motto of Wit and Wisdom. So my litmus is because I did come into Wit and Wisdom with a deficit mindset. It wasn't for me, and it wasn't for my kids, which is code in my case, for my Black kids in Baltimore, because that is pretty much exclusively who I teach. McKinley rose to the occasion. She rose to the occasion and far exceeded my expectations. So I had, pardon the phrase, a come to Jesus moment. Kyair, is your problem that you're not good enough for wit and wisdom, or that your kids aren't good enough for wit and wisdom? And both of those didn't sit well with me, but sometimes in life you have to have those moments and you come to. So that's my experience with wit and wisdom. My kids have risen to the occasion time and time again, and I could not be more proud of them. It's really exciting to be their teacher. So some of the things that are incredibly powerful, right, with wit and wisdom are just how students are engaged. You can see my students looking at a rigorous text in this picture. They're using the computer to research. They're using their reading journals to compile their evidence and their information. We're really sticking to those Common Core anchor standards, R1, right, anchor standard 2. We're citing the text. We're using multiple pieces of text evidence to understand what's going on. That has impressed me as a teacher. Now, I'm pretty sure you all have seen the mug, right? I love planning, said no teacher ever. But here's the thing. I love planning. Ever since Baltimore City got Wit and Wisdom, I really actually like the lesson planning process. Why? Because the material that we use and the topics that my kids get to engage in, not only is it high quality, but wait for it, it's interesting. I love engaging with it, and I'm intellectually stimulated. Before Baltimore City got Wit and Wisdom, I actually had to buy a neck brace, and I was thinking about a class action lawsuit because of the whiplash that we got, because we were always doing something that was so disconnected and not integrated. We had a separate writing curriculum, a separate reading comprehension curriculum, a separate foundational reading program, and a separate vocabulary program. I have to take a breath because it's too many curricula to mention. In Wit and Wisdom, it was all put together, and it's magic. So when we're thinking about some things that might be, difficult about Wit and Wisdom, I think that the biggest glows, and I want to go back to that, the biggest glows with Wit and Wisdom, it's a knowledge building curriculum. So when I give you that anecdote and that story about my student McKinley, you think to yourself, how could McKinley write so much? Well, she wrote because she knew so much. The adage is, you cannot write from that which you do not know. And McKinley, gosh darn it, she knew. So she wrote. Here's another example. My student Zay, he was in 703. We actually moved him up to the honors class. Now, I'm not saying that what you're looking at is a perfect essay, but what I am saying is that his knowledge is thorough. His knowledge is thorough, and it's because we spend depth with a topic. Not we're trying to overwhelm kids with skill and kill. Now, some of the aspects that could be really difficult for Wit and Wisdom, I am a PD facilitator for Wit and Wisdom over the summer, and I've heard this from the ECE sort of aspect, right? Is that, and this is our lower elementary, sorry, I don't mean to teacher explain, our lower elementary friends in kindergarten, first and second grade, right? Is that there could be some more supports within Wit and Wisdom for those friends, right? A little more scaffolding. What does the work look like? What is an appropriate amount? And I know that Wit and Wisdom is working on this with their expert content teachers, and it's one of the things that they're continuing to roll out. So I also think that, sometimes, and I don't know how political to get here, I will say in various parts of the country, respectively, you do have some folks giving the feedback, I'm unsure how constructive, but giving the feedback about character diversity. My thoughts about character diversity in Wit and Wisdom really come down to the fact that the books are high quality. The anchor texts are chosen because they exemplify the module topic. So as we're talking about sixth grade, well, the first module topic is about enduring incredibly difficult times and overcoming those hardships and really experiencing some personal growth and transformation. Now, again, I teach Black kids. So when we're talking about the characters, one of the things that my students, might have trouble with is, how do I relate to a character, Billy Joe, who's a young white woman, young white girl in Depression era Oklahoma? But that's where this sort of grow is really a glow, right? Wit and Wisdom specializes in windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors. This integrated model allows for students to connect with characters, right? The knowledge building process allows students to really get a depth out of the topic itself. The last thing I'll mention as far as glows before I go on to a few more grows is that there's an intentional focus on fluency. I teach 7th grade, and it is amazing that my students are intentionally focused on fluency routines in the upper grades. Because in some cases, it's only in the lower grades that we're focused on those foundational skills. So, if we take what we know and believe about the science of reading, Scarborough's rope, really, right, our sort of literacy background really compels us. And I think that there's like a moral obligation here that we need to do better in grades 4 and above, but particularly 7 and 8, focusing on fluency. Wit and Wisdom does that. It's intentional and it's embedded. And because it's an integrated model, it's not like students are doing a lot of cold reads of a text that they're unfamiliar with. It's the core anchor text. And if it does happen to be a cold read, it's a cold read of a text that continues to build their knowledge of the module topic. So some of those grows that I was talking about, right, were character diversity. And again, I've heard some of these complaints, not everywhere in the country when I've done my PD, certain parts for sure. Well, what about if a character looks like this and a character looks like that? My big example again is Billy Joe when we talk about the book Out of the Dust. She is white, my kids are black, and already we could sort of have a deficit mindset about those differences. And well, my kids can't relate to that. It's the depression and it's 2023 and my kids are, concerned with face space and TikTok and whatever. Well, when we start reading Out of the Dust, what I have found is that my students love Billy Joe and care for her so deeply. They love and care for Billy Joe, not necessarily because of how Billy Joe looks or how she presents, although it is important. They care and love Billy Joe because of the personal struggles and hardship that she's going through. She loses a mother. She loses a brother. She's coming to grips with a really frayed and fractured relationship with her father, and she's trying to find herself. You could argue that some of us are still trying to find ourselves too. And it's our job to help sort of guide students on that journey as they try to find the person who they're trying to be. And that is sort of the magic of this grow of character diversities. Yeah, we can talk about not enough black characters, not enough brown characters, not enough characters with a disability, but it's the module topic that really draws us in. And I've talked about those ECE supports, and I know that Wit and Wisdom is working on that as well. So, here are some really good tips for success. One of the things is that people sometimes are like, well, here, Wit and Wisdom is a scripted curriculum. I go online, I look at the print edition, I look at the digital teacher edition, and it's scripted. Well, no, those are questions that you should ask or could ask, but I modify those questions from time to time based on a scaffold that I might need. The short version here is remember to build knowledge for your students. There was not a suggestion to me, hey, Kyair, go to YouTube and play a video about the Great Depression that is in rap form so that your students understand why the Great Depression happened. That's not embedded in the curriculum. But I knew that if I could get my students to understand in any way possible a vocabulary video, a rap that another teacher created, that's building knowledge of the module topic, which means I'm not hurting kids. I'm actually helping kids. Remember to give yourself grace. We are imperfect people in a society that demands perfection, and it's really okay to give yourself grace and make mistakes, take chances, and get messy. Quoth Miss Frizzle. The module map is also another great resource if you have the print or digital teacher edition of Wit and Wisdom. It shows you the standards for every lesson, where the assessments are coming, and how individual lessons connect to the overall end of module project and the end of module task. The module map is my best friend. No, besides, anyways. You also have the prologue. The prologue is a great resource that is an addition now in Wit and Wisdom. I would use the prologue as what I call an on-ramp. It sort of gives you a little extra runway, if you will. I'm mixing metaphors here, but a little extra runway before you start the core Wit and Wisdom lesson. And it's great if you are a reading interventionist, a special educator, because now you can use some of these prologue lessons to help students access the content that a teacher might be using in the core lesson. Fantastic resource for special ed students or students with an IEP, as well as our multilingual learners. The last tip for success is remember to collaborate. 2 brains are better than 1, and many voices are better than just the one, right? So just to understand that if you can collaborate and continue to build knowledge, I promise you, you're doing right by kids.
Thank you so much, Kyair. Your experience definitely supports our push for NYC public schools to extend NYC Reads to middle school. Thank you again. So now we'll have Caitlin Dobson out of Oakland United School District for EL education. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Hi, everyone. My name's Caitlin Dobson. This is my 11th year teaching in Oakland Public Schools. I started out at a charter school in 2013. And we adopted EL education in 2018 when we realized that the district did not have a curriculum. It was sort of in the days after open court, and we were piecing together different programs. So we really focused on EL education. I only taught ELA. I didn't teach math, so I really got to dive into it. Every PD, every PLC was focused on EL education. Every coaching meeting, pretty much the whole year. So that really was, I was really able to kind of dive into the curriculum and get to know it.
Okay.
I began coaching EL education last year in Oakland Unified, where I coached all the teachers at one school, K through 5. So I got to know the curriculum pretty much every grade. And then, let's see, I worked with a lot of teachers who were pretty skeptical about the curriculum and about EL education. But I think after working with them and really diving into the curriculum during their PLCs, it really got them excited about it. They're feeling confident, and they're really loving sort of the whole curriculum and what the kids are learning. Currently, I teach first grade, and I teach everything. So EL education is just one part of the day. Yeah, so something that's been powerful. You can see actually that picture. The kids are doing a research reading project, and they just love the texts. That's actually something that's been really powerful is the research reading. There are so many great books in EL education. So just the core texts are really engaging, but then the extra supplemental texts that I would highly recommend trying to get for your classroom. I have a whole library of them, and that's where the kids go first for any reading they want to do. They always are so excited, whether it is about sun, moon, stars, or frogs. They go to those books first. Other things that have been powerful are that students become experts. They know more about frogs than most people when they study frogs in 3rd grade. And then in 4th grade, they study animal adaptations, and they become an expert on their animal, and they love to teach other grade levels and teach their families. My 1st graders right now know so much about the sun, the moon, the stars. They just love it. And then birds. So there's a lot of really powerful topics that they get to talk about and become experts in. The writing process that they're using they get to learn the writing process, and they end up producing a lot of really high quality work that they love to show off and read. The one other really great thing is that the families are invited into the curriculum. We have big end of module celebrations that are sort of planned out in the curriculum. They love to see what their kids are doing. The kids love to share, whether it's a poem or a magnificent thing that they've built. So I love inviting the families in. And then another thing that's been really powerful is just the coaching and working with grade level teams. I think we've been able to get so much done and work together to really dive in and get to know the curriculum. I'm going to move on to what has been hard. It definitely feels like a lot at first. There are so many texts and books, and there's a supporting materials, there's a teacher guide, there's, they're pretty wordy, but it takes time to read through each lesson and plan each lesson, but you kind of get to the place where you're seeing sort of the lessons, they're all, follow a similar pattern, and it really starts to take less time as you get to know it. A lot of the lessons are a little bit heavy on teacher talk, but that's where knowing your learning target, which is a really big focus of this curriculum, knowing your learning target and focusing your lesson on how to achieve the target becomes really important. And there's some close reading curriculum guides that they're hard at first, but once you get to know them and how to sort of dive into those and work with them, then they become a little bit easier. There's usually a close reading component in each module. And then the curriculum needs a lot of scaffolding, mainly for ELs. So if you look on the screen, it's talking about poison dart frogs. It's just one example of like how we scaffolded some of the work, including a lot of pictures, a lot of spaces for them to write. So it has been hard, but it's such a great curriculum, and it definitely gets better. Some of the glows, there are a lot of high interest books, nonfiction and fiction. The kids really love the text, and I love the text. I get so excited about the different things that we're studying and about the research reading books. Along the same lines, the topics are really interesting. Students cannot wait to learn more. When I usually introduce a new module, and they are dying to know what it is for weeks before we do it. So they love learning about the new topics. The vocabulary instruction is very explicit, and it's always taught in Unit 1, and then it's used throughout the module. So the students learn a lot of vocabulary, and then it's reinforced over and over again. And they start to use it in their writing, and they start to use it when they're talking about what they're learning. The students are also able to really grapple with the complex text that the program provides, and also the different tasks that you have to do. And then I love how the learning is assessed using various ways. So there are speaking tasks, there are projects that are done in groups, there are written assessments. So it really helps all students because the assessments are so varied. A couple of grows. The lessons are long and often need to be shortened because of the time. But again, just focusing on those learning targets really helps to figure out where you should shorten it. And they will definitely get easier to go through the whole lesson as you're going through the curriculum. The scaffolding, like I mentioned, it definitely, a lot of things need to be scaffolded. The materials are a little dense and take some time to navigate and unpack, but once you get the hang of it, it gets easier. There's another place on the screen where it's just a way that our team unpacks each module, each unit, and we also do lessons like that. So just even though they're dense, there are ways to unpack it. And then the planning materials for writing sometimes need to be modified to include more space for the students to write. There's a little tiny boxes, and then include picture support with those materials as well. A few tips if you are doing this curriculum. First, just take time to unpack each module, each unit, and each lesson. It will help you so much as you go through each of the 4 modules. And this is great to do with your team. And so you get a lot of different people talking together. I would say use slides. The slides have helped me. Even if you don't teach from the slides, I would just make sure that they're keeping you on track and you could put your timers in there because there are so many things you have to get done in each lesson. There's also a lot of anchor charts. I love anchor charts, but focus on the ones that you feel like are most impactful and that can take you throughout the whole module. And then again, start with your learning target, focus on that the whole lesson. And if something isn't related, that's the first place that we like to cut. Again, timing is hard at first, but it will get easier. And my big suggestion is all the PD that you can handle, I would suggest going. You learn so much from other people who've done this work. And that's all I have.
Plenty of food for thought around the implementation of interreading, Wit and Wisdom, and EL education. I'd like to remind everyone again, we would love to get your feedback. The survey links are in the chat, as well as the QR code that you see there on the screen. Please share your feedback for our awesome educators, and just kudos to you for the impactful work that's happening within your classrooms. So now we'll shift gears a little bit. We'll bring back Dr. Jetta Donovan, and she will be joined by her colleagues and fellow senior managers at TNTP, Kim Bell, Brittany Farrell, and Rachel Haynes.
Good evening again, everyone. Thank you for having us. My colleagues and I at TNTP support districts across the country who are doing what New York City is doing, which is making changes into evidence-based literacy and using high-quality instructional materials to do that. And we have worked with districts across the country who use HMH interreading, Wit and Wisdom, and EL, and are just going to share some of our takeaways from that district experience and what we've learned through working with teachers. So I'm going to hand it to Rachel first to talk about her experience with HMH.
In my role, I have been able to support multiple districts in their first and second year with interreading. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking to you about some of the key resources that we've identified within that. A little bit ago, Erica mentioned that there are so many resources available within interreading, and we really strive to uplift those pieces that are going to be essential for adhering to the principles of the science of reading. First and foremost, we want to talk about the reading foundational skills component of interreading. In kindergarten through second grade, there's a new component called the structured literacy lessons. And those are really a refinement of a previous foundational skills curriculum in order to make it more explicit for our students to really hone in on a scope and sequence that will be supportive and accelerate students' learning of those reading foundational skills. And so in order to take advantage of that, we want to make sure that in the beginning of your implementation, we're protecting enough time for those lessons to really roll out effectively and thoroughly. 30 to 45 minutes is ideal for that. And also to ensure that as you are moving into a new scope and sequence for reading foundational skills, that you're keeping an eye out for any gaps that occur for students so that we can be sure to teach into that as we're moving along. There is also foundational skills lessons in every third, fourth, and fifth grade lesson as well. And we want to make sure that we continue with that learning for students so that they can really solidify their fluent reading skills as they move through their elementary career. Additionally, for those resources and everything that we're going to talk about here, there are embedded ML supports, and those are really important to pull up and understand in terms of some very tangible and actionable steps that you can use to support multilingual learners. When we're thinking about our reading comprehension portions of Into Reading, we want to do everything we can to uplift the knowledge build that happens with the text sets in Into Reading. And one of the ways that we can do that, and Caitlin really spoke to this when she was talking about EL, is to internalize from the module level and the text level all the way down to the lesson level so that we can have every lesson build towards that essential question and really help students to understand the topic that they're studying. There are, again, multilingual supports that we want to make sure that if we are using the principles of backward design that Erica mentioned, that we're aligning those supports as we go, and then collaborating as teams to plan lessons that really focus deeply in oral discussion and in written response to reading on questions that are text specific. So really unpacking those texts through both of those modalities. And last but not least, there are opportunities throughout the curriculum for assessment. There are module assessments at the very end, but additionally, there are multiple writing opportunities throughout and performance tasks at the end of each module, especially in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Those tasks do a fantastic job of pulling together all of the information that students have learned in their text sets and asking them to represent that in writing. And we really want to lean into giving students those opportunities and then analyzing their work so that we can give them feedback and help them continue to grow. So if we are focusing on those most important pieces of Into Reading, it's really going to help you to accelerate your learning and your students if they move into that curriculum. I am going to pass this back now, but thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Kim Bell, now to talk about EL.
Good evening. I hope that you can hear me. I come to you from a perspective with a PhD in literacy with over 20 years in education. I've spent many years researching reading, mainly complex texts and teacher knowledge, but I've had the opportunity as a district leader to implement the EL curriculum prior to working with TNTP. So first, I just want to value and say that implementing new curriculum is really hard, but it's also very rewarding. And so when we think about EL, it is built for equity with high levels of learning for all students. It really focuses students on a text, and each module is filled with diverse topics and diverse authors. So for example, Module 1 at the K2 level, they're really learning about themselves, about their community. But in 3rd grade, they get to learn about how to overcome learning challenges. And then 5th grade, they're learning about stories of human rights. And they're also get a really neat module around athlete leaders of social change. And then when we move into 7th grade, they get to learn about plastic pollution and how to make a difference. And it's really engaging to hear students talking about these things. So it's not a script. It's intended to build teachers' knowledge as much as it is students. And it takes time and space to internalize the lessons. And the first year will take longer. The lessons will take longer. And it is going to be a little more challenging. But there are scaffolds in place that enable students to experience rather than avoid complex text. So one thing to remember is that these texts and these tasks are complex. Teachers often skip the scaffolds that are in place. For example, the language dives that unpack the meaning of complex sentences, or there's conversation cues, which is a key strategy to deep collaborative conversations. But if our students aren't used to reading and experiencing complex text, then those scaffolds will need to be intentional as we're internalizing these modules and these lessons. So when that productive struggle for students is exhausted, this curriculum empowers teachers with knowledge to question rather than to explain. And it brings the focus back to the text around the key phrases, statements, the organization of ideas, those qualitative features in the text. It also employs strategies like close reading to give students opportunities to gain knowledge from specific text in service of comprehension. But one really great thing I love about it is it deepens students' discourse by engaging protocols that require critical thinking and higher levels of student-to-student conversations. But we have to remember those protocols are embedded and they're meant to be taught. So if you're a fourth grade student and you've not previously had EL, then you have to consider how you're going to teach those protocols to your students. The 6-8 curriculum, one thing to think about is that it does make an assumption that students have had EL from K-5. So there are things that transfer over. The most important thing I want to tell you about is how it empowers students to be independent readers and writers that progress across domains and grade levels. But this will not happen after the first year of implementation, so it will take time to do that. And I thank you for your time here and wish you the best with what you're doing.
Thank you. My colleague Brittany to talk to us about Wit Wisdom.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Before working at TNTP and before I was a curriculum specialist, I was a classroom teacher in Las Vegas, where I taught multiple elementary grades for over 16 years. Though CCSD is the 5th largest school district in the country, we did not have a district adopted curriculum during my tenure. And I would have loved to have had a rigorous knowledge building curriculum like any of the ones mentioned today when I was in the classroom. Now I support multiple districts with materials implementation, including large urban school districts like Metro Nashville Public Schools. MMPS is now in year 3 of their adoption of Wit and Wisdom. And one of the major lessons learned with these materials is that understanding the structure of the curriculum is key to successful implementation. So in addition to everything that Kyair said so beautifully about Wit and Wisdom is built on the idea that students build knowledge through curiosity, using high quality, rigorous text, images, and media. Students follow a path of inquiry through a series of texts to answer a big essential question. The structure of the curriculum includes 4 modules with an overarching essential question. Each module is divided into focusing question arcs, which are designed for students to investigate a smaller component of the larger question. So in year 1, the teachers in MMPS focused on understanding this essential question and the culminating task of the module, as well as practicing the instructional routines, which are consistent across all grade levels. During their collaborative planning, the teachers would practice these routines with their colleagues, which helped them understand the quality of the routines as well as some of the logistics. Then in year 2, the teachers began unpacking the focusing question arcs. This helped them better internalize how the arcs and the lessons build to ensure that students gain the knowledge of the module and are able to execute the culminating task. By this time, the teachers began feeling that they were maybe starting to understand how all of the pieces fit together. So for example, on the right side of your screen, you'll see Module 1 of 4th grade. I love this module so much that I taught it to my daughter over the summer, who's a 4th grader now. So here we have a wonderful, thought-provoking, essential question asking students to consider what it means to have a literal and figurative great heart. In the first focusing question arc, students read biographies about famous historical women to consider how they demonstrated great heart. Then students read about the circulatory system in arc 2 to learn about how the literal heart works. Then students began to put the 2 concepts together by reading the novel Love That Dog and various selections of poetry to produce a culminating informational multi-paragraph essay to answer the essential question. Now, in year 3, the teachers that I support in MMPS are working to intellectually prepare at the lesson level by digging into the questions and tasks to better understand the content and craft stages of instruction. When these materials were first adopted, honestly, the teachers felt understandably very overwhelmed. Now the teachers are excited to share their students' writing with their colleagues and look forward to parent and family conferences to hear more about how students are going home sharing what they learned about the heart or the digestive system, or how cultural beliefs and values guide people. What I love about this curriculum is that it's built on the idea that students are inquisitive by nature. They bring their own unique contributions and experiences to the learning while building knowledge. I regularly beg the district leaders I support to plan my visits around the student-led Socratic seminars because they are really something to behold. And as someone who inhales books, I love the idea of chasing a question through a series of texts rather than sitting down to read for the main idea. So this idea is a catalyst for students to embark on their own path of inquiry, which not only builds knowledge, but creates lifelong learners. Thank you.
I'm going to wrap us up in our group here by just sharing some key takeaways from our work across the country supporting districts and my colleagues here who do this work, and just highlight a couple of key learnings that we apply in our approach to this work. The first is, in professional learning around HQIM adoption, for all of our educators, there has to be a balance between knowledge and skills. There is certainly important research and background knowledge that teachers need to have to understand the evidence base behind their instructional materials and the instructional shifts. It is important to understand why chaining is an effective routine to teach both phonological awareness and phonics for students. But you also need to know how to facilitate that chaining routine. You need to know how to give feedback to students, right? So any professional learning we do really tries to balance giving the teachers that why behind their instructional materials, but also the how, so that they can leave feeling confident and effective in implementing their instructional materials. And so I think that balance is really important. The second piece I would say is making sure that all their professional learning is grounded in their curriculum. Any coaching or feedback or planning or co-teaching or professional development that teachers do needs to look at how you apply these things in their instructional materials. They need to see clear and explicit models of what successful implementation looks like and sounds like, not just in literacy practices in general, but inside their own specific instructional materials. And so no matter what professional learning we're engaging teachers in, wherever possible, we try and make those connections and build those connections to whether it's like small instructional routines inside their HQIM or giving them actual lesson preparation time to plan for lessons and apply their learnings. But I think that's a crucial part of this recipe as well. And then the last thing I'll say is job embedded coaching. Educators need, and this will not be a surprise to anyone who is a classroom teacher, need real-time application of their new learnings into their classroom with their students in order to make sustainable, lasting change in their practice. I have seen many a teacher go to professional development and be intrigued and interested in the ideas, but then not really implement it back in their classroom with students. And the only way you really get to that stickiness of implementation is by ongoing support in your classroom. And so making sure that teachers have that long-term coaching and support is really a crucial part of this recipe. I think one of the highlights of New York City Reads for me is that when I look at the investment that the city is making in this initiative, I see all of these key components in how they are thinking about ensuring that we're not just giving high quality instructional materials to a teacher and, unwrapping the box and leaving them there to figure it out on their own. But there is really a lot of investment and thought in going into what is the curriculum-based PL and job embedded coaching that teachers will need in a sustaining way to be able to implement these materials successfully and make them work for their students. And so very excited to see this initiative unfold and the impact on students across New York City.
Thank you, TNTP team. We build it as straight talk, and this definitely has been what that has amounted to as it relates to these three curriculum, given the goals, the grows, things to be considered, advice. I'm sure the educators that are in attendance appreciate all of the information that has been shared thus far. But we will also, again, love to hear from you. The feedback survey, there's the QR code, as well as the link is in the chat. So please take a few minutes to complete our survey so that we can hear from you and know that and integrate your feedback into our next series, because this is just phase one of this webinar series in our partnership with Knowledge Matters. So we'll bring our educators back in a second so that we can begin to field some of these questions. If you have questions, just place them in the comment section, place a Q before the question, and we will get to as many questions as we can with the allotted time that we have left. So let's bring back our educators. Yes, Erica, Kyair, and Caitlin, so that they can answer some of the questions that have been posted. So the first question is, how is scaffolding offered for all students? And we'll begin with Erica.
So when using the interreading curriculum, they give you options for differentiated instruction. They give you a script that you can use. Also with the vocabulary, there's vocabulary support. There's also level text reading for students at their various reading levels. There's also teacher support to guide us through the plans and the next steps that we could take to help students scaffolding instruction for them in small group instruction while integrating technology for them.
Kyair.
Yeah, so I think when we think about scaffolding, it's a tired but true answer, right? What do we know about our students and how can we best help scaffold for them? So for me, it's a video. It is maybe an article that's building knowledge from News ELA, and we have access to our Clever app. I also think that another area that you can look at with Wit and Wisdom is embedded in the lesson itself. It will actually have a teacher toolbox, and it says different considerations for scaffolding, differentiation, students above grade level. So really having and using those materials. I prefer the DTE, which is the digital teacher edition, but you also have access to that with the print teacher edition. There's going to be a specific box, an insert that is very clearly labeled like what a teacher should do for differentiation and scaffolding for students above or below, or even some extensions, which I really love because now you're not trying to think through and make up one more thing. It's embedded in the curriculum and it tells you what to do. I'm a work smarter, not harder teacher because I've been working hard for 11 years.
Indeed. Caitlin.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple different ways. In each lesson, there's something called meeting student needs. And so it provides lots of different options. It's sort of at the end of each lesson. So you can look at that first. There's also a language dive every few lessons where you break down one sentence and it really focuses on vocabulary. And so that helps a lot of students sort of like learn whatever that piece is about and then apply it to the rest of the lessons. We do a lot of picture supports and like Kyair was saying, like extra materials, videos, any sort of tech that we can add to it to help meet student needs.
Okay. This question is for you as well, Caitlin. How does EL prepare our students for digital learning?
Yeah, I think a lot of the more in the upper grades. So from third on, I'd say a lot of it is done like Google Classroom, doing a lot of the writing online. Let's see what else. There's not a ton of tech in the lower grades besides videos and stuff that we're showing. So yeah, I would say most of it is writing different writing projects or making slides online.
All right. This question is for Ms. Boyce. What was a best practice for, quote, getting started with HMH interreading?
Best practice, I got so many. First, a boss that's knowledgeable, a boss that knows his why and why he's doing it, and having workers that emulate that. Knowing that we want the kids to succeed, ensuring that we sit down and we put our brains together to think about the gaps and how we can fill those gaps, being transparent with one another, what we didn't know, and leaning on one another, and just taking the time to help one another and partner with one another going through the curriculum, looking, using a backward design and starting from there to help make our students successful. So it's teamwork and collaboration, because I know when it comes to the classroom, every teacher's in their classroom and they just focus on getting the work done and they don't collaborate. But in our school, we work together and we brainstorm and we come up with problems and solutions to the problems. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been a recurring theme, this idea of collaboration. Ask again if there are any more questions while we have this esteemed panelist here. So while we're mining for questions, Kyair, is there anything you want to leave us with as it relates to Wit and Wisdom?
Yeah, I really think that as we think about how to move students, and I don't want to like misuse a term that gets volleyed around a lot in education, but I think about equity and really how do we help students, and it's very particular to me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of New York educators. Just thinking about the students that I teach, and I'm very big on the fact that I teach Black students in inner city Baltimore, and whatever sort of judgments people make when I say that, and it's very personal to me that it is a rigorous curriculum. And I'm not going to lie, I thought that Wit and Wisdom was meant for, pardon me getting a little too honest tonight, the white folk in Montgomery County. Like, that's really what I thought when I heard that we were getting Wit and Wisdom. And then McKinley kicked my butt. And she wrote 3 pages, and it was 3 pages of awesomeness. And not just McKinley, then there was Jordan, and then there was Nessie. There were so many student examples of kids just crushing it. So I had to stop myself, like I said. The big thing with Wit and Wisdom is I really think it levels the playing field. I've gone on record. I probably should have coined it so I could have got some coins myself. But it is a party. Knowledge is a party, and everyone, even the adults on this thing, would feel some type of way if you didn't get an invite slid your way. Now, I want to go to a party. I do. I want to cut up, turn up, and I want to learn, and my kids want to participate in class. Wit and Wisdom offers students the ability in a scaffolded way. So if we go back to that scaffold question for a hot minute, that is the lesson design. You have wonder lessons where students are literally noticing and wondering. Today we watched a documentary by Baltimorean Kandwani Fidel for his book, Hummingbirds in the Trenches. And literally the highest level of rigor they had to do was notice and wonder about the documentary and then write a summary. But they were engaged and they knew that they could do it because they're like, oh, I just have to notice and wonder. And then we're going to organize the text tomorrow and then we're going to do something. So the way that lessons are intentionally designed, it's already scaffolded with the wonder stage, the organized stage, reveal, distill, know. That levels the playing field when you have a McKinley type student who feels some type of way, knows that they have an IEP, sees that they get pulled out in front of her peers. Well, now the playing field's been leveled. Now we've got some equity going on in class because McKinley's knowledge is so sufficiently built. She feels not only comfortable participating in class, but she's got the knowledge to participate in class. She's got that invitation. In fact, McKinley's the one handing them out. I'm just trying not to wallflower too much.
So exciting stuff. We have another question. How do each of the programs address, quote, teaching reading in K through 2? Caitlin.
So EL has three different programs. So the one that we are working on right now is the main curriculum. There is also a early literacy program that we actually don't use in our school. We supplement with a different early literacy program. So there is that part, and then there's another curriculum called the labs so there's labs and all block. So there's 3 pieces. But yes, there is a teaching reading curriculum for the K2 students. I am unfortunately not that familiar with it.
Erica.
There is phonics and decoding. There's also, when it comes to letter sound, relationships. There is also the comprehension part of the curriculum for the younger kids in K through 2. Even though I'm the 5th grade teacher, I'm trying. There's comprehension strategies for the younger kids, explicit instructions and just making predictions and asking questions, and the level readers, the level rig books for all various grades.
Thank you. Once again, reminder, please share your feedback with the survey links that we have so that we can hear from you. Are there any other questions at this point? Caitlin, if you have one overriding thought that you would like to leave our audience with, what would that be relative to EL education?
Yeah, I think just taking your time to really unpack the materials and really like think about how the whole module, what the whole module looks like before you start in on one lesson. Work with your team, collaborate, and really, like kind of see the end goal before you start even breaking it down at all. It's a really powerful curriculum, but it is a lot of pieces and a lot of moving parts. So just breaking it down as much as you can.
Erica, please share into reading.
Knowing your why, knowing why you do it, because it's a thankless job. It's not for the faint of heart, but just knowing your why, knowing who your audience is, just being transparent with them and letting them know that you have their best interest in mind. So, and collaborating with your teammates, collaborating with your teachers, that's your second family. And you got to work together to figure it out just to make learning successful.
Awesome. Thank you again, our expert panel of educators. Thank you so much for sharing. I love the anecdotes and all of the food for thought that you provided for our educators who are listening in. Also wanted to remind everyone that our partner, Knowledge Matters, they have developed a new tool that you can use to assess ELA curricula that you may be considering. And this is for other educators who might be around the country who are still considering curricula, that they can definitely go on the Knowledge Matters website and access this tool so that they can use it as a barometer to assess the quality of ELA curriculum that they may be considering. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to our ED here at E4E New York, Maria Elise Divane.
Thank you so much, Lasana. Gratitude to everyone who logged in, all of our viewers, our panelists, Erica, Kyair, Caitlin, Jetta, Kim, Rachel, and Brittany. Talk about straight talk. That's what we had tonight. To our partners at Knowledge Matters campaign, TNTP, New York City Public Schools. We know we had several deputy chancellors who joined us tonight. Thank you to Deputy Chancellor Quintana, Deputy Chancellor Rux, and to their teams as we continue to push in this so very important moment. To the E4E team, and to all of our educators nationwide. We can't do this without you. We do this with you, and we are grateful and better because of you. I do want to put in another plug for our educators in New York who are equally concerned about math. We will have a high quality math committee meeting December 13th from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. We ask you to join us. Once again, thank you, everyone. We wish you amazing holidays, and we hope that you are safe and that tonight was fruitful, and that we will see you again soon. Thank you all.